Hello friends! In this video, I'll show you how I gave our old beer pong table a new tropical look. To preface, I have zero art training, not even high school, so don't come for me if I'm doing something wrong. Instead, you can share how this project could have been done easier for those watching. Don't hate, educate. To revamp our table, I used paintbrushes of various sizes, painter's tape, a palm sander, sandpaper, paint, and lacquer. I used wall paint, and I'll explain why later. If you don't have a palm sander, you can use sandpaper on its own. It'll just take a little longer. I started with 150 grit sandpaper, but I should have started with something lower, like 80. Grit is how sandpaper is measured. The lower the grit, the more coarse the sandpaper. Start by sanding the table, starting with your lowest grit. Our table has this gray plastic layer on top, so I was careful not to sand too much to go through that top layer. After I finished sanding, I took painter's tape and taped off the edge of the table. I couldn't find a blue primer at our hardware store, so I started painting with this Mondarian blue from Behr Marquee. These sample pots cost me $5 each, and I ended up using 2 of the blue ones in total. So due to some battery and memory card issues, we lost this footage, but after we picked up a new card, we were back in business. Right now, I'm marking the painting tape with the quarter and half measurements of the table. Measuring the table was some of the footage we lost. I also measured the distance between the cups at each end of the table. It should be 165 centimeters or 65 inches. Now I'm marking where the trees will be on our island. Start by placing the first cup at the 165 centimeter mark. I marked it for 10 cups, but you really only need 6 for a standard game. Now I'm mixing the Mondarian blue with white and black to create some dimension in the ocean. Now I'm painting the lighter blue around the islands and the quarter lines. At the same time, I'm going in with a darker blue to fill in the rest of the table. I wanted to do this while the paint was wet so I could do some blending. All the paints that I used were from Behr Marquee, and this color is called Honey Tea. I'm using this color to paint the islands. I chose to use interior wall paint because it's a latex acrylic paint. I figured this would hold up the best, while also being easy for me to get my hands on and not super expensive. It also worked with the lacquer I had, as both are water-based. Now I'm going in with some of the honey tea color that I mixed with the brown that I have. Same reason as before, just adding some texture. This time I'm holding the brush straight up and down and using the edge of the brush to create a rough look. To show the quarter lines on the table, I tried to make a sandbar. I'm not loving how it turned out, but whatever. To make waves, I use this sponge that I got from the dollar store, and I tap it on the table. Then I drag the brush away from the wave break. I took a paper towel and I sponged it on top of the wave break to make it look less square. Now I'm remarking the cups so I know where to put the trees. This is where painting the lines on the painter's tape really helped because I didn't have to remeasure. Going into this, I had no idea how I was going to do the palm trees, so I started with planet green paint and made some stems for the palm fronds. We lost some of the footage here, but all I did was mix up that planet green with the white and black like I did the blue. I used a smaller brush to paint the light green away from the stem, and now I'm going over it with a darker green to add some texture. To make the boat, I sketched out the top view of a simple pirate ship. I used the rare wood paint color. I mixed some of this brown with white again just to add some texture, and I decided to put the ship near the center island. You'll see why in a minute. I painted on the sails, and then I realized I painted the big sail on backwards. The flat side should be facing the back, so the sail looks full. Now that it's all painted, notice my little treasure map. I take the tape off the table and I touch up the edges. The important thing to remember about the lacquer is not to shake it. Stir it slowly to keep bubbles from forming. I paint on a thin layer of the lacquer, following the drying instructions. Next, I'm using 150 grit sandpaper to sand down the lacquer. In hindsight, I regret this. Even though I tried to be careful, I sanded through the top layer of my paint. It's a good thing I did the original layer of blue to start, so my oversanding wasn't noticeable. After sanding, I washed the table and I put 2 more coats of lacquer on, and it's finished. Overall, I love this table. It gets so many compliments. It took around 4 days since the lacquer took so long to dry. And I painted this in the garage with the door open, so there's plenty of ventilation. Comment below if you want to see more crafts like this, and let me know if you would have done something different. Don't forget to like and subscribe.